episode 60 of the Hockey Hub. Sophia and Adam here with you again, kind of a continuation of the last episode we did because we talked too long and we couldn't get to our grading. We were grading all the players after the Bruins missed the postseason, and we just got through the forwards, Adam. So we're going to continue with defensemen, goalies, and newcomers, kind of trade deadline guys coming up from the AHL. But the reason also was because there was some coaching news, and there's more coaching news now in the NHL, which is where we're going to lead. This is the quickest I've ever gotten to hockey information. Usually I like to ramble for 10 minutes. I'm going to save the rambling for a little later. But we do want to start with some more coaches being available potentially. We have Rick Tocchet, who officially is available from the Vancouver Canucks. And there have been some rumors on the internet from some credible sources, Dan Powers being one of them. I was on Dan and his brother Chris's podcast actually last year. Great guys. But they're saying that they're hearing Jon Cooper, and maybe let's start here because it's bigger news. Jon Cooper, who's currently in the postseason with the Tampa Bay Lightning. If the Lightning don't make it out of the first round, rather, the rumor is that he and the Lightning would part ways after close to 15 seasons as their head coach. First of all, do you believe the rumors? Second of all, if that's true, according to you, what does that mean for the Boston Bruins?
Well, in terms of if I believe the rumors or not, I would find it hard to believe, but anything's possible, to quote KG, because, we're in Celtics playoff season 2, so that's pretty relevant. But in terms of, the hockey, as we take a look at Dan Powers' tweet that he put out there on X, some are saying Jon Cooper's job could be in jeopardy with the Lightning in the first round. And it's funny, too, right? Because we were talking about Mike Sullivan on the last episode, and you think of all the success he's had in Pittsburgh, but they had missed the playoffs for, 3 consecutive years and hadn't made it out of the first round since 2018. And I know that it was a mutual parting of ways. The Lightning have been in the playoffs every single year. Now they've had a first-round exit the last 2 and are on the verge of a 3rd consecutive first-round exit. But with all of that said, they're still getting to the postseason. They still have a core in place. And Jon Cooper, I believe his contract continues on through next season because he signed a contract extension. So I would find it hard to believe. But again, you never know. And we're not in the room. We don't cover the Lightning, so we're not around the team. So I don't know what the vibe is in Tampa right now in terms of, how the players feel about the coach, how management feels about the coach, how the coach feels about manage. I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on, right? Because when we talk about, the Bruins, because we're so close to it, Sophia, we get a general sense of how, things are going, how you get a vibe check, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's what we think is what's actually happening, but you get a little bit of a sense. This would be a surprise. Some of the other head coaches that have been fired or mutual parting of ways or however you want to put it. You kind of saw it coming, right? You saw Peter Laviolette in New York coming. You saw John Tortorella in Philly coming. The Rick Tocchet, situation, which we'll get to in a second after this, you kind of saw coming as well. Dan Bielsma, you saw that too, right? That's not a surprise. Jon Cooper to me would be a big surprise if he is fired by the Lightning. No question about that.
Yeah, and you know what? I would agree with you about it being a big surprise. I think the whole hockey world would, but we are very close to a couple of surprises ourselves. Like when Bruce Cassidy was fired, that was a big surprise to a lot of people.
It was a surprise to him.
It was a surprise to him. And there was, a resume and a record that didn't seem to add up. It's like, okay, what's going on over here? Then they hired Jim Montgomery. Understandably, I get, the season that they were having at the beginning, but I think that also came as a surprise to a lot of people after the record-setting seasons. The first round exits, or the first round exit, and then a second round exit the year after. Okay, maybe that added to it. But to your point, it would be really odd, but I think we've been close to some surprises that didn't seem to add up to other people that happened. So nothing's out of the question, as you mentioned. And the thing that would make sense if it were to happen. I think it's very clear that the Bruins, stuff is happening around the league, need to wait before they hire a head coach, as well as the other teams who are looking for one. Let's see what becomes available. But Don Sweeney and Jon Cooper have a working relationship because of Team Canada and, GM or AGM for tournaments and the Olympics coming up. Jon Cooper being named the head coach. He was the head coach for the Four Nations tournament. Don Sweeney, part of the Team Canada organization there. So there's that little wrinkle you want to put in there that they have a good, I guess it's a good working relationship already. So that adds something to the curiosity. Thickens the plot. Like to say
it does, but again, you have to get there first, right? And I just don't, getting back to one of your question, your two-part question, if I believe it, I don't really believe it. I don't believe that the Lightning would move in a different direction unless there's something else that we don't know going on in Tampa right now.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. And the Lightning could be out of the playoffs by the time we have the next podcast, and then the conversation is completely different. By the way, just throwing it in there, the Bruins just released their kind of key off-season dates for what we need to pay attention to as media members and as fans. And I'm not going to highlight all of them, but a big one coming up: draft lottery on Monday. Wait, let me look. What number is that? Monday the 5th. Monday. I was like, what day of the...
It's Cinco de Mayo. I mean, come on. You don't have any plans?
Not yet, but I will. I always impulsively, depending on the weather. But yeah, I'll probably be out having a market.
Weather's been great, by the way. I mean, this is so we're getting to that point, right? We're getting to that point in the year where it's starting to get really nice outside, and it's making me sad in a way, right? Because there's no postseason hockey in Boston this year, right? Because that's all a part of it, right? The weather gets better, gets nicer to go to Fenway, watch the Red Sox, the Celtics in the postseason, and the Bruins, are usually in the postseason. Being around TD Garden, for the Celtics and the Bruins at the same time is usually the case. So while I'm excited about the weather, it's making me think about the first time in 8 seasons the Bruins haven't been in the postseason.
No, I mean, of course, it's weird. Like, a lot of people are texting me, like, what are you doing with your time? And I'm like, well, this podcast. But yeah, I mean, I've been watching the games and some of the highlights from what's going on the West Coast and just the vibes. You forget, and it's impossible to forget what the Garden feels like, but you forget how it ramps up like overnight from the final regular season game 82 to game 1 of the postseason. It's insane, the atmosphere, and I'm just so envious of all the fans that are experiencing it now. Even if it's just one round, not saying that would be enough, but even that one round for some of the teams that squeaked in, like, what a treat. But whatever, Adam, we've got to build towards the future.
No, and maybe, I know.
With this draft lottery, that'll dictate some things. So do you feel how we can talk about Rick Tocchet, but how long is too long to wait? Because you have these coaches that potentially are becoming available or already are, that other teams might be scooping up. But then you want to see, obviously, where you're picking in the draft lottery. You want some cards to fall into place. What do you think's too long? Like, how soon should this decision be made for the Bees?
I mean, it depends on who they're targeting, right? And I know that we've talked about all the names that are out there now. I mean, Tocchet is the 10th head coach to leave or no longer be with his team. However you want to put it, right? There's fired, there's parting ways, there's leaving, right? Whatever, resigning. I mean, his contract was up anyway, right? So that went into his decision and thinking of just where he is at currently. But yeah, I mean, if you want one of those guys, I mean, I would imagine those are some big names on that list, and if that's if that's on your radar, if any of those guys are your target, yeah, you got to act pretty quickly. But you heard Don Sweeney in the press conference say, you got to wait for some maybe potentially postseason runs to come to a close as well. Yep. It could be some head coaches on that list, could be some current assistant coaches on that list. Of course, Jim Montgomery was an assistant on the Blues staff. So I don't. It just depends on who they're targeting. If you're looking for the any one of those names that are currently available of the 10 names that 10 head coaches that are out there, then yeah, you got to act pretty quickly, I would imagine. Because again, you get Laviolette, Tocchet, Tortorella, Bylsma, Cronin, right? There's some names out there, so. Yeah, that we're well underway. It could happen any moment, right? We could have we need a breaking news sounder. So that way, if it happens while we're doing this podcast, we have like a breaking news sounder and it will be ready to go and make an announcement. So, and that could be for the Bruins or any other team looking for a head coach right now. I'd be on board with that. We should get on that sooner rather than later.
It would be cool to have a breaking news sounder. You did, side note, we're going to pivot here. You did hard news in your career or just sports? You did, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For a year and a half, maybe, back in Canada. And that was a completely different beast doing that. But I did love when something happened and I had to run up to the studio or go on site and be like, this just in. That was really cool.
Is that what you'd say? Like.
I mean, I worked for a cheesy hard news station. You got to say this just in when something's just in. Did you ever use that?
Well, no, I think this just in does sound like it's like a bad scripted movie line, for what they think fun. TV news people. No, I would say, I don't know, we're following breaking news at this hour, something along those lines. Breaking news, obviously is a big thing in local news. So, you got to create a sense of urgency. This just in, there's some urgency there, but if you're like, we're following breaking news at this hour, right? Because you put a timestamp on right now, during this hour, we're following breaking news.
Yeah, but what if something was just in when you have your IFB in and your producer's like, okay, so I'm telling a story, and then there was something that was just updated. I'm like, guys, we're getting updates as we speak. This just in. It was so much fun.
This just in doesn't sound like it just sounds like, oh, this just in. This just in. I don't know. It sounds cheesy. Okay. I think we're following breaking news at this hour. We're following a developing story. That's another good one.
We're going to agree to disagree on that one.
Fair enough.
You should try it sometime. Like, if we get breaking news when we're doing a podcast, just try this just in and see how it feels. It just feels really cool.
This just coming into the Nesson newsroom. Another one.
We'll see what happens. I just looked it up when you were talking. June 30th is when Jim Montgomery was hired by the Boston Bruins. So, again, not in the summer, not late in the summer, right before free agency, right before development camp. So we'll have to see. But I think you'd want to wait a little bit longer to see what teams do. And I don't think there are many firings after like a third round exit, after an Eastern or Western Conference final exit. No. So you're looking at like the first two rounds, interviews, then you can make your decisions. Do you have anything to say? Maybe I'll start with my thoughts on Rick Tocchet. I was just looking at his resume. Head coach, obviously in the NHL, has other coaching experience, but head coach for 9 seasons. And in his head coaching tenure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I just checked, made the playoffs only twice. I think that's very important to the Boston Bruins that there's more playoff experience. What are your thoughts on Rick Tocchet?
Yeah, I would look more at the recent head coaching experience rather than the experience in Tampa, let's say, back in the day, because if you want to play that game, well, when Bruce Cassidy was hired by the Bruins organization, right, and he had head coaching experience in Washington long time ago, it was more about the growing into that role. There's countless examples of coaches and managers in baseball, if you want to do the cross sport comparison. When Terry Francona got to Boston, I don't think he had a playoff season in Philly. I'd have to look that up, but I'm pretty sure that they didn't make the postseason. Rick Tocchet's taken his team. He was coach of the year, in Vancouver, Jack Adams Award winner. So I think there's obviously some familiarity too with the Bruins organization. Played here once upon a time. Was part of a huge trade back in the 90s. The Adam Oates deal. He and Oates sent to Washington. He ended up getting Jason Allison as part of that package, which ended up being captain for a short time here in Boston. But anyway, I digress. I think Rick Tocchet is an interesting name too, right? Mike Sullivan's an interesting name. Oddly enough, those two were on the same coaching staff in Pittsburgh for a time. Tocchet was an assistant under Mike Sullivan when they won a Stanley Cup in Pittsburgh. So, I think that's an interesting name, and we'll see how that plays out too.
I agree in terms of you're right. Like you can't look back at the beginning of coaching resumes or careers. I don't know if I know enough about. Like I've interviewed him several times. Great interview. Apparently, he's a pretty good players coach. And kind of we talked about old school versus new school. Mike Sullivan's style is a little bit more old school. I think Tocchet's got a little bit more new school vibe. So it'll all, really depend on, and it's funny because Jim Montgomery and Bruce Cassidy, very different, very, very different coaches when it comes to player relationships and personalities. So the Bruins have gone both ways, and I guess we'll see what their needs and what the fit is and who they're bringing in. Are they going to just really be developing the guys they have in their system? And are they going to need a guy that can work with guys like that? Or are they making big off-season moves, trades, so on and so forth, bringing in more NHL experience? And maybe they're going to need a coach that's got that. So either way, the rumors are swirling. We're kind of staying on top of it. And maybe one day we will have our little breaking news dinger, and you can say whatever you want. You can say,
I'm sorry, what was that? A breaking news dinger?
What are we calling it? What is it called?
Sounder.
Whatever. It sounds like
dinger.
A ding.
That's like a home run.
Ding, ding, ding. I was thinking like a bell. No?
Yeah, all right. There you go. Breaking news bell. Yeah. Sure.
I told you, I can't speak English. Like, I don't know how in this career.
Let's get the breaking news dinger. And it's gone.
Ding dong. All right, Adam, let's continue our grades. But first, it's time to talk about another show we have on Nessun, and that is called Okay, ready? It's called Respect Your Game. This is a promo. I'm trying to lead into the promo naturally. But Respect Your Game is another podcast we have, guys. So for the latest on the Boston Fleet, as they make their playoff push for the PWHL postseason, you can check out Nessun's Respect Your Game podcast. As usual, available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, going back to the grades. First, we're grading you.
Oh,
Adam.
What?
An A+++ because you got Teammate of the Year.
Oh, man.
Nessun does their annual awards as well. You get Teammate of the Year, absolutely doing anything and everything that the company needs. I was off for several months, and you stepped in and filled in. Kind of saved me my job, to be honest with you, because you just really helped with that time off that I needed, and obviously Dale as well coming in. But you do Red Sox stuff, you do everything. Well deserved. Congratulations on your award.
Thank you. Yes, these are our company awards that were handed out the other day. So I didn't have a acceptance speech ready, but I will say that I have a lot of great teammates here at Nessun, and they prop me up, and I also have a lot of opportunity here at Nessun, and I have been here for now, this is 12 and a half years, 13th year at Nessun, and I've gotten to do so many different things, including Bruins coverage over the last 3 years, working on the game broadcast, and obviously in the studio pre and post game, and now the Hockey Hub, which has been I think we launched at the beginning of hockey season, right? So yeah, a full season of Hockey Hub in the books. Now, I guess this is our first off season of Hockey Hub. So yeah, it's been great. So thank you. I appreciate the acknowledgement. A+, wow. I don't think I ever got an A+ in school. So that's cool.
Plus, I gave you 3 pluses.
3 pluses? Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's crazy. All right. I don't think I deserve that.
Very pleased to know that Nessun didn't just give you a plaque either. There was some fun prizes to go along with it. Because I was like, dude, that is such a company move just to be like, not ours, but, corporate companies to be like, hey, here's the plaque. It's like, what? But you got some goodies too.
Yeah, it was an autographed picture of Sophia Jurksztowicz headshot. It was perfect. I'm going to cherish it always.
Framed.
Yeah. No, that costs extra.
Okay, let's continue. So we did forwards last week or last time. Let's move on to the defensemen, Adam. And just if you guys are listening you missed last week's episode or whatever, you didn't get it. I'm not giving grades because I missed most of the season. I don't feel like I should. Adam's giving the grades, and then I'm going to give some banter, whether I agree or disagree. But why don't we begin? And we're going to start with Mason Lohrei.
All right, so Mason Lohrei, second full season in the National Hockey League. He got a B minus. He got a B minus. Okay. So some good things. Obviously, when you talk about Mason Lohrei, you talk about him as an offensive defenseman. And he led the Bruins D-men in assists and points. 5 goals, 28 assists. Averaged 19 minutes and 32 seconds of ice time per game. Saw his role increase, elevated role once Hampus Lindholm went down, then Charlie McAvoy went down, so they were dealing with a lot of injuries on the blue line, and so he was thrown right into the fire, played 77 games after playing 52, I believe, last year, and so got a lot of great experience. On the other side, he was a minus 43. And I know plus minus isn't the end all be all when it comes to evaluating a player, but a minus 43 does stand out. And it was the worst rating in the National Hockey League this year. And so one of the things that Mason Lohrei, admittedly, and his coaching staff say he needs to work on is the defensive part of his game. And I think that when you talk about defensemen in the National Hockey League and you talk to anybody who knows the game like the back of their hand, right? Like our great analysts at Nesson, it takes a while for D-men to sort of find their game at this level. And so usually it's year 6, year 7 along those lines where you sort of reach that point where you're like, all right, like this is your prime. Forwards, it's a little bit quicker. But in terms of Mason Lohrei, after now 2 seasons in the National Hockey League, there was some progression, but there is plenty of room for improvement. So the grade is a B minus.
Okay, yeah, no, I would say I would agree. Like I said, I missed a lot of the season, but in watching and understanding the progression of young players and talking to Andy Brickley always talks about how the defensive part of the game, and depending on like what your style is, are you a true stay-at-home defenseman? And we know the league is changing and blah, blah, blah. But that kind of, there's another blah, blah, blah. I like to throw those in. That comes a little later. And he and I had talked about, Brick and I think on the broadcast with Judd as well, about the balance of stifling the creativity of a young player that takes risks, that jumps in on the play, that drives to the net, that makes fancy moves, which is what you want to see. Of course, as long as it's defensively responsible, but that comes with time and experience. And so there is this fine line of like, hey, letting a player just do that, find his creativity, find his swag. And, the more you do that and the more it works out, the more confidence you build. If you do that and it doesn't work out 3 or 4 times, and then you have your coaching staff being like, don't do that again or change this up, that can really, stifle someone in the middle of their growth. And maybe they're afraid to do certain things, which we've seen actually with players in the organization, not just defensemen, but forwards too. And, if you even want to talk about the shot first mentality that some players need to have, that doesn't necessarily translate. It's more about what I'm talking about, like confidence with the puck and confidence to try risky and creative things. And so that is kind of the discussion, like I was asking Brick about when that happens. And I think next season is a year when you're going to want to see more growth defensively, where he's spent some time now being able to understand the NHL and, get that confidence and that swag with his, like I said, offensive skills. But now the balance is there and the experience is there, not fully, but there. The familiarity with the coaching staff, they know him, he knows them. And it's easier to kind of maybe coach a young player like that where he's not, being scared to take those chances. So we will see how that develops into next season. But even though the plus minus, or even so, like you said, it's a bit of a controversial stat, even though defensively there's room for improvement. I'm excited for what we have in Mason Lohrei.
Yeah, no question about that. I mean, a young, talented player, and hopefully, and again, you mentioned the coaching staff. Well, not sure what that's going to look like yet, too, right? So, Mason Lohrei's first year, he had Jim Montgomery in part of his second year, and then Joe Sacco taking over the reins, albeit the same assistant coaching staff. You don't know, what's going to happen in that department either. So, for a young player, having some change early on in his career, too, to have to adapt to as well.
All right, let's talk about one of the newcomers that was a big offseason signing, Nikita Zadorov. Curious about your take, because I feel like there was a up and down, or like the trajectory went a certain way. What's your take on Zadorov's season?
All right, so the overall grade, first off, is a B.
Okay.
Got off to, obviously, you mentioned it, signed the deal in the offseason. One of two big pieces that the Bruins brought in the offseason, along with Elias Lindholm. Oddly enough, those two following each other everywhere, right? They were both in Calgary, then both got traded to Vancouver at separate times, and then both end up signing with the Bruins. And so those two were the marquee signings in the offseason. We talked about Lindholm getting off to a slow start with the Bruins, learned about the back injury, all of that stuff, ended up finishing pretty strong. Well, Nikita Zadorov got off to a slow start as well. A tough start, obviously, with the penalties that he was taking early on. Trying to adjust to the Bruins system defensively, all of these different things that were a factor early on in his performance. But we talked about the injuries on the blue line and Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm. Well, Nikita Zadorov certainly stepped up. His play really picked up towards the second half of the year, ended up with 4 goals and 18 assists, a plus 22. Which, again, for a player who had a minus rating for, the first part of the year, and for a player who's on a team that finished in last place in the Atlantic Division, that's pretty remarkable that he ended up with a plus 22, and he led the Bruins in time on ice. So I would go with a B overall. I think, again, listening to him at the end of the locker clean-out day, whatever you want to call it, he admitted that he didn't get off to the best start, and so I think, like Elias Lindholm, you hope next season those two come in, and now a year under their belt are impactful right out of the gate.
What, Adam? What about? I came in. I was like shadowing for a couple of days in March, and then I came in March 15th. I forget which game this was, but it was at the beginning of my return to NESN. There were a couple of games, I think, back to back that like physically, fought. Also defended Jeremy Swayman in the crease. Like it was like had this really big presence. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that maybe he wasn't doing that at the beginning of the season. I think the Bruins kind of brought him in for that too, just to be more of like that physical presence, intimidating guy. Am I wrong? Did he kind of ramp that up near the end?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably more noticeable because the other deficiencies, we'll say, in his game early on in the year, he mitigated that. So basically, I think what stood out at the beginning of the year is the fact that he was taking all these penalties. And I think that he was taking a lot less penalties as the season went on in terms of stick penalties, offensive zone penalties, things that you don't want to see happen. And so, the physical part of his game stood out because, you weren't criticizing the other part of his game, right? So, to your point, and I also think that speaks to, the leadership role that he took once the injuries on the blue line happened, once the trade deadline came and went. I think that was part of it as well. And you referenced March 15th. Well, that was a week after the trade deadline, so that makes sense.
Zadorov led the NHL from producer Brendan with 145 PIMs. So there you go. And, really quick, I just, my little 2 cents on him, Murat Husnudinov said in his broken English, and I say this with all due respect, it would be so hard to have English as your second language and then lights and cameras on you and all that. But he tried his best to kind of say how big, and no pun intended, Nikita Zadorov has been for him. He just kept saying huge, so important, so important, kind of letting him, in the room, but even on a personal level, letting him store his stuff, like you're moving, you're getting traded, you don't know where you're going to be, what your summer looks like, letting him store his stuff in his place in Boston and making sure he's just like not worried about anything personally outside of the game other than playing. And then obviously with the language barrier, making him feel included, taking him out, bringing him around the team. And you just expect, if you're the only other guy that speaks Russian on the team, for you to do that. But it was just nice to hear that he took him under his wing in a way that seemed like not just for the team, because you're expected to do that, like, okay, I'm going to help translate, or I'm going to help you understand certain things, more like became his big brother and, wants to have that role. And Nikita said he wants to kind of make sure he is seen that way with some of the future young guys. So we'll see how his leadership develops as well. All right. Andrew Peeke has spent some time with the Boston Bruins by now. How did you grade him?
B-. B-.
Okay.
I mean, he was pretty solid. Andrew Peake's not the offensive player that Mason Lohrei is, obviously, so you don't look for that part of his game in terms of how you grade him necessarily. Finished with a goal and 16 assists, was paired with a number of different players, obviously, with all the injuries and the turnover that the Bruins had over the course of the season. I would just say he's a solid stay-at-home defenseman. I think you saw some development in his game from an offensive perspective as well, in terms of puck movement and things like that. And those are things that he acknowledged that have gotten better since his arrival at Boston last year at the trade deadline. But I would give him a B-, pretty solid.
Okay. I don't have much to add to Andrew Peeke, but I like your assessment and grading.
I'll say this too about Andrew Peeke, and maybe I should change the grade to a B or a B+. He and Morgan Geekie were on the Hockey Hub this year. So, you come on the Hockey Hub, maybe it influences teachers' grade a little bit, just saying.
Okay, let's give him a B then. Let's do that.
There you go. Perfect.
Parker Wotherspoon was not on the Hockey Hub.
No. It's going to hurt him. No, I'm just kidding.
No, so that definitely hurt his grading. But what about Parker, who knows where he's going to sign this year? He becomes a UFA.
Yes.
Or is he?
Yeah. Well, I have to check whether or not that's because I know he signed the 1-year extension last year. I have to check out his contract. You can work on that while I give my analysis.
I'll check. Okay, you go.
Yeah, so I would give him a C, which is not a great grade. It's not a terrible. I went back and forth, between a B- and a C+ and a C. I ended up with a C only because I think he expected a little bit more out of him, and I know, again, not one of the top 4 defensemen on the Bruins. But after last year, the way he stepped up and filled a role, got the contract extension, I expected a little bit more out of him. Just 55 games this year, was a healthy scratch. A goal and 6 assists. The one thing about Parker Wotherspoon that you love about his game is the fact that he's not afraid to mix it up, stand up to anybody, and stand up for his teammates. So the C grade might be a little harsh now that I reconsider. And we talk through this. I think maybe he's more along the lines of C+, B-.
Yes, so Parker Wotherspoon confirming that he is a UFA.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with his career. And a young guy, 27 years old, he wants to continue it in the NHL, and we'll see if that means with the Boston Bruins or not. Last but not least, and we're purposely leaving Hampus Lindholm off of this, but not Charlie McAvoy. But last but not least, Charlie McAvoy.
Yeah, Charlie's a C.
Okay.
So obviously dealt with the terrible situation after the Four Nations face-off with the shoulder and all the time missed at the end of the year, and he talked about it at the end, saying that this is, in so many words, a season to forget. Personally and team-wise, he didn't get off to a great start either, right? And I know you can say that for a lot of guys, no question about that. He didn't get off to a great start to the year. He actually did. Well, actually, the first couple of games he did. I believe he had. I think he had 2 or 3 goals in the first couple of games of the year between Florida and Montreal. But wanted a little bit more out of Charlie, and I think he wanted more out of himself, and talked about that from an offensive perspective and on the power play, right? Because he was quarterbacking the power play. The power play, not all on him, but he's a part of that unit that just wasn't getting it done. And so, from that perspective and, elements of his defensive game, I think too, he could tell you were not up to his standard. And so, yeah, I would go with a C, but I would also, I would temper that too with an incomplete, just because of the situation, the Four Nations, missing all of that time. That's not easy either.
Okay. I think you're used to me going off on tangents, but I'm going to try not to, but I do have to go off on a bit of a tangent with Charlie McAvoy over here, okay?
Okay.
This is like, I feel like the type of person I am or I'm becoming, I'm like less of a thinker, more of like a feeler. This is where the tangent comes in, okay? Intuitive, where I'm like, oh, I feel things. I don't see things. I'm like, this makes me feel a certain way. And I'm going to go based on the feelings I've had around Charlie McAvoy and how they've changed over the seasons. And what really stood out to me is the end of season presser, which, by the way, for those of you watching and don't know how it works, the Bruins do a really good job of making sure they don't bring out like really big names and players at the same time, but it's a long day. Sometimes they overlap. So you might bring out a Charlie McAvoy, Jeremy Swayman, a Hampus Lindholm at the same time. Adam and I were there. Judd was there for a bit, kind of tag teaming, getting into these scrums, getting the answers. I happened to be around Charlie McAvoy. You were getting sound somewhere else, so you weren't in that scrum, but I was right there in front of him, kind of like right beside him, and I could say it was tangible. His body language, his attitude, and his energy in a positive way. But I've never felt McAvoy be as serious and as determined in my life. And like, I haven't covered him for that long, but I'm saying the McAvoy that came out for the end of season presser was very different than the McAvoy that I have seen before. And not to say that the before was bad, it was just different. And so I'm just adding that in here, that I do feel like after the crazy trade deadline, after the way the end of the season played out, and after his injury, that he is like stupid motivated, like really motivated and really determined to take the reins of this team. And maybe it was falling apart a little bit and not let that happen. And I loved his conviction. I loved his honesty. And I'm really excited about the McAvoy that's going to come back to hockey next season, praying and hoping for him personally that his injury, he wasn't cleared to play in the World. So his injury gives him enough rest and time. And it was scary. Like, infections to that degree are very scary to have a good off season. But I feel like we are going to see a leaf turned and a brand new McAvoy next season, both on and off the ice. And I'm pumped about that. So that's my little tangent. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, for sure. And he needs to be a big voice in the room, and he needs to be a big presence on the ice. No question about that. And so you hope that, A, first and foremost, he's healthy and recovers and there are no setbacks going into training camp next year. And B, he takes last year as a learning experience. And again, this roster is going to look different. The coaching staff could look completely different. So there are going to be a number of challenges right out of the gate for the Bruins as a whole, and they need leadership in the room. And Charlie McAvoy is one of those guys, one of those main guys.
Okay, I love it. Adam, guess what?
What?
We have the dinger ready to go. The breaking news dinger.
Let's hear it.
That's what I'm calling it from now on. Let's hear it. Oh, I like it. I really like it. Oh my God. It's everything and more. This is exactly what you want. Like, cheesy. There was like the layers to the music. I'm giving that an A+. What do you think?
I was thinking it would be a little different, to be honest with you. So can we play it again? Is it possible? All right. I like that part of it. No, that was the finish, I think. Yeah. No, I actually like the ending of it better than I did the beginning of it. The beginning of it was a little, dare I say, weak. I was thinking of like a big breaking news sounder, like almost a goal horn, like the Bruins goal horn sound or something like that. But I can work with that.
We can work with it. I liked it, but yeah, maybe it starts slow and then maybe the music of the soft is like the reporter running to the position. Like okay, they're running, and then by the time they get to the desk, it's like.
You got to put your two fingers on your ear too, as if it's coming in hot from the producer booth.
I do that, and honestly, I do that for real. Depending on what rink we're at, which it can be so loud in some rinks that I'm actually like, if it's Dale or you at the desk, I'm doing this not for effect, but because I really can't hear anything unless I like plug my ears.
I got the double. I got the double going.
I gotta get the double, man.
You need the double, dude. Yeah, especially if you're ice level.
Yeah. I have the one. I plug the other ear.
Yeah.
Okay, Adam, it's time for another promo before we move on to goaltending and players. This one about Boston has entered the chat. You guys
love
have probably heard about us talk about this podcast, and we do Hockey Hub here. It's all hockey, but Boston has entered the chat is about the biggest trending news in sports and around Boston. So you guys can watch that, hosted by George Belechki, Travis Thomas, and Casey Hudson. Also available wherever you get your podcasts. Where are we? We're doing goaltenders next. Two. Something just fell. Sorry.
That breaking news sounder really threw you off there.
It did. Okay.
There it is.
I'll let you lead. Where do you want to start, Jeremy or Jonas?
Well, I was going to say, I only have two options, right? Yeah. Let's go with Jeremy Swayman first. Okay. C. It's a C grade for Swayman. 22, 29 and 7, 892 save percentage. Gave up the most goals in the National Hockey League this year. Again, not all on him, but it's part of the stat line. Faced the 7th most shots as well in the NHL. Of the 52 goalies who played this year, of the 52 goalies who played at least 25 games this year, he was 45th in goals allowed above expected. So, not a great year. Obviously, the contract situation in the offseason played a role. It's something that didn't get resolved until the season started, and so he didn't get any training camp in with the team, didn't get any preseason action in, and then was put into the lineup, and that's how the season started, and he got off to a slow start as a result. Now, what I will say is that that situation has now resolved itself, obviously. But the bigger thing, and the question going into the year, Sophia, was, it was always Swayman and Ullmark, right? 1 and 1A. And the big question was, how would Jeremy Swayman handle a full-time role, a number one goaltender role? And he says he felt great. He felt healthy. He was pleased about that. He was, quote, proud of his body, I think he put it, in locker room clean out day. And so, he was able to stay healthy, and he was durable. So those are good things, for Swayman moving forward. And he also said that this year was a learning experience for him too, right? Not only the volume of games, but I think just in general, because again, still a pretty young guy, we're talking about here, I think 25 years old. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the grade. And hopefully there's improvement moving forward, which I believe there will be.
I do too. Hold on, I'm still looking this up. I know it's not that big of a deal, but now that I'm on it, I'm in it. 26, turning 27 in November. But still, yeah. I mean, whatever your point.
26, right?
Not that big of a deal. For Sway, my only comments are, I think we forget as people, as fans, as reporters, everything is an adjustment when you're like in life, like, even if you're in a corporate job and you change positions, there's an adjustment. It's just not always as impactful as a professional athlete with all the attention on you. And that is just a hard thing to get through. And I don't want to be making excuses, but for him, and I'm sure he doesn't want to use that excuse for long and past the season. But there really is an adjustment period with that. And like you mentioned, the Linus Ullmark was a very unique situation, not only them being really great friends, but just being both of them at the top of their game and the best goaltenders in the league, how much you can lean on each other, XYZ. So just to have that factor eliminated, and then the amount of games, as you said, as well as just the pressure of giving up a couple of goals or having bad games and then having to get right back in there. Razor talked about that all the time. Is a very different scenario. So it's kind of one of those easier said than done things, but you hope it doesn't extend until next season. And I do think this learning curve is hopefully going to be over, but I feel like it happened, and important that it did now, as opposed to having a couple good years and then you're going through it and maybe you're wondering what's wrong with me. There are things that make sense as to why Jeremy Swayman wasn't having the year that he wanted to have. And now you can move on and focus on, taking that and running with it and working with it for the next few seasons.
Yeah. Turning the page. No question.
Turning the page. Yes. Okay. Corpy. Where did Corpy get?
He got a B-. He got a B-. So again, big storyline last offseason, Linus Ullmark getting traded to the Senators. We talked about Mark Kastelik being part of that return and being a pleasant surprise. And I think that, the big focus at the time in terms of the Bruins' return was Joonas Korpisalo. And you look at the numbers last year in Ottawa, not great. He was the full-time guy, 55 games, near the bottom of the league in the major categories. And you looked at the salary that went along with that too, and thinking, all right, well, is this really good value for Linus Ullmark? Well, Korpisalo had a decent year. He had some decent numbers. They're not going to jump off the page at you, but I would say that, in his role, he was good, and he was a solid veteran backup to Jeremy Swayman, and a guy that maybe, again, we don't know how the offseason is going to play out, if he's going to be on the roster next year. I mean, he's under contract, so there would have to be some sort of trade, but I do wonder if, maybe he gets a few more games next year, just to sort of lighten the load for Jeremy Swayman, but also because, he's a veteran, proved that, this year in Boston, that he's got plenty left in the tank.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he did say, I think I started in that scrum and left. I don't remember, but he did say he wanted more games, right?
Yeah, he did.
He wanted more games, and as most professional athletes who are competitive do. And it's funny, it's like the one position, obviously, that you, maybe if you're like the seventh defenseman, you're also, or a fourth liner, you're also sitting for some of the season if you're a healthy scratch. But it's a tough position to be in. You're a professional athlete, you've worked your whole way, and then you're a backup goaltender, quote unquote. So very normal for him to want more. And I wonder too, what's going to happen. I do agree with you. I think it's going to be more of an even split unless one of them blows it out of the water and is like evidently on his game.
Well, I don't know if it's going to be close to an even split.
No, maybe not even, but sorry,
more. Maybe more games for Korpisalo. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Adam, we have more players to go through, but one more promo, and it's about this show that we do right now, Hockey Hub. So,
good. That's an important one. Yeah.
It's very important. It's about us. Yeah. But guys, remember, if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to the show so you know when new episodes are coming out. And as usual, it's also found on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever else you get your podcasts. And you are listening to Sophia and an award-winning award teammate of the year.
Yeah, that's right. I guess that's true. Oh, yeah. Someone buzz that, please.
By the way, I'm not being like, I don't know if the word is facetious. I'm not downplaying. I'm not trying to be a jerk.
You're not minimizing it?
No, I'm not.
All right, good.
I'm not trying to be award-winning. Like, no, actually, award-winning Adam Pellerin, okay?
I know. You're not really that sarcastic, by the way. So
I'm not?
No. You think you are?
Okay. Wait.
Or maybe I'm being sarcastic with you.
This is really rattling me because I just had a discussion with somebody that we have 90 seconds left in the show. I had a discussion with somebody that I'm getting to know. You can read between the lines over here. I'm dating, okay? And I think I'm really funny. And sorry, I'm just going to say that. And he was like, you're not that sarcastic. And I was like, wait, you might as well call me ugly. Like, I don't care. But like, if you're saying I'm not funny or not sarcastic, that's rude. I take that personally. And now you're saying that? Do I need to get myself checked?
Man, I feel like this turned into a whole different podcast just like that. Once we read the Hockey Hub promo, we filled our obligation to talking about hockey. Now we're talking about your dating life. How about that?
Well, excuse me. Are you
what a pivot?
Am I not sarcastic? Am I not like witty? Because this is really stressing me out.
Well, let's say those are two different things. Sarcasm and wit. Now they can go hand in hand, but I don't think that that's an indication that you're not witty if you're not sarcastic. You can be witty and not sarcastic.
I'm not happy, Adam. I need to talk to you about this privately.
Oh man, look! Don't lump me in that guy, that loser you're dating right now. All right, like I don't want to be associated with that guy.
No. He's a great guy.
We got a relationship built to last here at Nesson. All right, I don't want to mess that up.
He rattled me when he said that. I was like, I'm the funniest person you'll ever date, buddy. But apparently not.
Sorry, I'm sure he's not a loser. I'm just kidding.
No, I know you're kidding. Let's to be continued on the next show. Okay. I'm going to work on my humor. We got to go. We're wrapping the show.
Okay.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Adam, thanks for being the best teammate.
Hey, thank you very much. And look forward to hearing more about your dating life in the next episode.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.